Good afternoon, all. Welcome to this lockdown knowledge series, which we have conducting. Today, we have a session on standard on auditing, especially for SME and next generation audit tool by Murtuza Kachwala sir and Milan Modi sir from Mumbai. Today, we have this session specially on request of our members. I request Harshal sir, our past chairman, to introduce today's speaker, CA Modi sir.
Thank you, Rakesh. Good afternoon to all. It is my proud privilege to introduce CA Milan Modi sir. Sir is a All India ranker in intermediate and final exams, and he secured the 38th and 36th rank respectively. Sir is a partner in N.A. Shah Associates LLP. Sir's main practice is in audit, area of audit. Sir has made more than 32 presentations at various forums like WRC branches, various CP study circles. The presentations were on following topics: internal audits, auditing and assurance standard, Companies Act 2013, and AS, due diligence reviewer, forensic audit, corporate social responsibility. Sir is a technical reviewer for annual reports for ICAI awards on excellence in financial reporting for last 4 years. That is 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, and 19, 20. Sir is a author of various articles in newspapers, on online portals, and professional journals published by BCAs, CTC, and ICAI on various topics. Sir is also committee member at Chambers of Tax Consultant and NDS Committee of WRC. With this brief introduction, I request sir to take the charge and deliver the session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that kind introduction. And welcome all to this session. During this second lockdown, I think is also a season where we also have to complete our audit work, and it's important that we during this pandemic also we continue to perform our audit duties in the same manner as we would have done without the lockdown. So with that message, I would just first put on my presentation on the screen. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the topic is standard on auditing, and I think all of us have studied standard on auditing. So I'm not going to narrate what is already written on standard on auditing, because that is already available on the institute website. And it is plain simple English language of what needs to be done by an auditor and what does not need to be done by an auditor. So it's like a rule book of what the auditor should be doing, in which manner the auditor should be doing. If auditor is in a dilemma, it also provides certain solutions to the auditor. What is the path which the auditor should take? So there is a lot of information which is already available in this standard on auditing. Obviously, they have been renumbered, and it's called as standard on assurance. So over the period, there has been a change. New standards have got added. But I don't think that is the focus. The focus is that when you're doing an audit of a small and medium enterprise, and we'll come to the question of what is a small and a medium enterprise also, that if you're doing an audit of a small and a medium enterprise, and if you are a small and a medium practitioner in that sense, what is the minimum care which you should take? So that, why is this care required? Why do you need to comply with this auditing standard? We'll come to that question also, that what happens if you do not follow the auditing standard. So let's take an example. What happens if you have signed something as an audit report or as a certificate without due verification. So based on trust or based on some request, and because of time paucity, you did not undertake the audit procedure, or you did it in a different manner than what is required. What would happen in such a scenario? What would happen if you are doing an audit of an entity where there is a huge loan taken and the stock does not actually exist itself, or if it exists, it is something which is either obsolete or non-usable? And obviously the bank would have relied to some extent on the financial statements to say that these are the inventories on the books. And since the auditor is saying that it is cost or NRV, whichever is lower, and the auditor would have verified whether there is any provision required in respect of slow moving or obsolete inventory. And if such provision has not been made, which is required under AS2, which means indirectly the auditor is certifying that this stock is good. What happens if you do an audit of an entity which has too many loans given and taken, and in that sense comes within the ambit of a definition of what is an NBFC? What is an NBFC? NBFC is any company which has 50% of its assets as financial assets or 50% of its income coming from those financial assets. What happens that you did an audit and as per the RBI 45, it falls under the definition of NBFC and was actually required to get registered as an NBFC, but the company ignored it, or the entity ignored it, and you then signed it without even, I would say, identifying this issue or identifying having ignored or turning a blind eye to it. What happens if you do an audit and then subsequently there is a dispute between the partners or the family members who are promoters or shareholders of the company? And let me tell you, to some extent, most of us who are practicing would have gone through one or multiple of these items during their practice tenure. So what happens? It's a simple rule. If it gets identified, if there is an inquiry, then you will become responsible for it. If there is nothing which happens and time passes by and nobody identifies that this particular thing has happened, maybe there is no impact as far as you are concerned. But we'll come to that also. So what happens? You generally are running after due dates. Your information comes at the last date when you have to either comply with the statutory due date or internal due date, which is set by the management. The accounting team at the client level is not well versed with what is required. So there is a threat that you are not only doing the accounting, but you are also certifying those accounts. So you are setting the paper as well as you are checking that same paper, or writing the paper as well as checking that same paper. What happens to the fees? Because this is one research which has happened, that for an auditor to fully comply with all the requirement, the fees need to be 4 times what is the existing level. Okay, so you can imagine you are getting 1/4 of what you actually deserve, and still you are responsible. People can hold you responsible for a lot of things which can happen wrong with the entity which you have audited. There is an expectation of the client to provide solutions, to provide way forward. And because of all this, it also leads to, you may have an audit conclusion which is drawn, but you do not have adequate documentation which is there in place. And this last part is very important, because the whole concept of audit is on 2 things. One is, what have you checked? What is the documentation of what you have checked? And third is, what is the judgment and the opinion form based on the first 2 activities which you did as an auditor. So what do we have to achieve? We have to achieve a compliance with the auditing standard. We have to ensure that it is well documented. The qualitative aspects of reporting are taken care of. there is compliance with accounting standard, Companies Act, if there's partnership deed, if it is trust, then the Trust Act, both in terms of disclosure and requirements. Because in India, as compared to places elsewhere, you need to understand that, for example, under the trust laws, there are specific questions which are asked. If you are doing the audit of a bank, there is a long form audit report. So there are specific questions which the auditor has to answer. So in that sense, there is very little, I would say, legroom available for an auditor to avoid the real comment or real observations which they come to, because these are pointed questions. And if they are pointed questions, the example is in Caro, you are specifically asked whether the company is regular in payment of statutory dues. Correct? So if it's a pointed question and it's coming as a part of an annexure to your main audit report, there is no way in which you can avoid it as a part of your reporting if there are delays in payment of statutory dues. This is one more thing which we practitioners need to learn, is that we generally take the last year's report and start editing it, which is fine. But sometimes if there are changes which have come, or if there are errors in 1 year, they get continued in the second year. And third, sometimes in this copy paste, we really lose out on what is really required to be reported. And as an auditor, you have to understand, either you are an auditor or you are not an auditor. The fact that you become an auditor and you believe that audit is a practice area where you want to excel, you have no choice to qualitative audit work, so that your work speaks for itself. Don't look at short term, look at the long term benefits of that. So what are we going to cover in today's session? We are going to cover some background, some practical challenges in application of audit standards, and how you should come out of those challenges, or what are the key observations which have been made by various institute boards or QRB boards in terms of non-compliance with auditing standards, so that we know, okay, these are the general errors which people are making, and then try to rectify by not doing those errors. And then last but not the least are certain suggestions and tips from my side. Am I audible, and is the flow or the speed okay, or do you want any organizers?
Yes, sir, it's okay.
Okay. So what does an audit of a small entity really mean? Obviously, the complications could be lower, but there could be other or different challenges. For example, if you're doing a large corporate audit, there may not be many cash transactions. But if you're doing a small trader or a small retailer, there could be a possibility of huge cash transactions from walk-in customers. And that creates a challenge, because you really don't know whether all cash has been correctly accounted or not accounted. You have challenge in terms of the inventory valuations, because physical verification or the ERP system may not be able to throw out what is the closing inventory balances. So inventory is either a physical balance at your end, or sometimes as a balancing figure. So yes, the complications are different, but that does not mean that there are no challenges. There could be nature of challenges when you do a small audit versus challenges which you face when you're doing a larger audit. Yeah. So I would say, just because you are doing small, do not ignore. Understand what is the driver of that enterprise and what are the risks which is associated, and try to address it. There is one thing which Institute has been very clear, is that whether it is a small size company, whether it is a medium size company, or whether it is a large company, auditing standards apply more or less in all respect in a similar manner to all these entities. So you cannot say, like for accounting standard, there are certain accounting standards which do not apply to a small company or a non-corporate, or they apply with certain relaxations. But in general, that is not the case when it comes to auditing standard. You do not have two different sets of auditing standard, one for small and medium enterprises and one for other. Same way, when it comes to a member who is a chartered accountant, the more or less the rules from the institute in terms of compliance, in terms of code of conduct, in terms of ethics, in terms of the peer review, in terms of filing, in terms of documentation, they do not see a major difference between a small entity vis-a-vis a large entity. Obviously, there is a difference, but I'm saying in principle, there are no major differences. So what are we talking about? We are talking about a proprietary firm, a partnership firm, an LLP, which is one of the favorite forms of organization nowadays. It could be a trust or it could be a small private company. So for example, if it's a small private company, it will still get governed by the Companies Act 2013. If it is trust, it will be by the Local Trust Act. LLP is partly covered under the Companies Act, and partnership deed, you have the Partnership Act. There is registration of firms. Proprietor firm is one which is not governed by generally any law. It's more of an individual, but still, institute has prescribed what should be done irrespective of the nature in which the entity or the business is being carried out. The recent change, which I think happened last year, mid last year, is on the definition of micro, small, and medium enterprise. And so there has been a change. If you can see now, a medium enterprise is where investment is not more than 50 crores and turnover not more than 250 crores. So you can see it's fairly large in that sense, though it is called medium in nature. When it comes to outside the urban cities, this is quite, a significant jump in the limits which were there earlier. As I said, it is mandatory under the company law, the auditing standard. So there is a very specific guidance in the act that the auditing standards are mandatory. When it comes to other acts, whether it is partnership or income tax, or whether it is in the Trust Act, they may not directly have influence on the auditing standard, but the ICAI Code of Conduct requires the compliance with auditing standards, and by that method, the member has no option but to comply with those auditing standards. What is the relevance of this auditing standard? As I told you, these are the do's and don'ts of an auditor. And if, God forsaken, if there is any problem with the work which has happened, if the auditor can prove that he has complied with all the auditing standards, and in spite of doing due care, whatever has happened, and he really has no role to play in the mishap which has happened or the irregularity which has happened, that will protect the auditor from being responsible for an irregularity which has been subsequently identified. So it is very important that you understand, when we do risk advisory work for a client, this is like, what is our own risk when I'm signing, when I'm putting my name, when I'm putting the UTIN, when I'm signing those financial statements. I'm saying I have checked it. And what is the steps which I have taken if we follow the auditing standards, and after that, subsequently some authority or otherwise an irregularity is observed, you can still say that you followed your steps correctly, you used the sampling technique correctly, you have documented what you have done, you have taken representation from the management on areas, you have relied on management estimates, and after that you have used your judgment to say everything is true and fair. In spite of that, this has happened because you were not doing an investigation or a fraud review. Yeah, so it's very important to understand what is the relevance of this. If you comply with these auditing standards, these also give you, a lot of small things which can help you add value to the client. So whether it is a management letter, or whether it is, reporting to the people who are charged with governance, or in terms of confirmation procedure, brings the firm which is doing the audit also a notch higher in terms of the tests which are being performed. It improves the overall image of the profession. If you have an auditing standard, there is an auditing standard obviously in terms of planning and delegating the work. It can also facilitate that you as a single practitioner, it's not possible that you do everything in your organization or your firm. You may have to delegate. You may have a hierarchy. You may not have an hierarchy. But if you want your people to do some portion of the work, you are also responsible for the quality control of the work which the people have done. And that's where it is important that you comply with this auditing standard. So there are 45 standards in that sense. And this is the broad categorization of all these standards. SQC1 is called as the master standard, which is basically on the audit control for audit firms. You know, there's a very important saying that who audits the auditors. So if you are doing an audit, who ensures that you have done a correct audit? Who audits your own self? And that's where SQC comes into picture, and we'll come back to this question that who actually does the audit of an auditor. There is one chat from somebody. I don't know what it is. Okay, fine. Then there are general principles and responsibilities. We'll come back to that 200 to 299. There are 9 standards there. There is risk assessment and response to the assessed risk. Again, for a smaller entity where you may not have a maker checker, you may not have segregation of duties. How do you do this risk assessment? Because these risk assessments have been drafted with a perspective of a medium to large organization, where there are multiple levels of control, where there is authorization metrics, where there are standard operating procedures. So I'll tell you how to comply with this risk assessment. Though there may not be a structure in place when the client where you're doing this audit. The next section is on the audit evidence. So there are 11 standards on audits evidence in terms of documentation, in terms of the permanent audit file, in terms of the external confirmations. The next section of auditing standards are on using the work of other auditors. So whether it is an internal auditor, whether it is if the accounts are being outsourced to another agency, then there is a standard on that. There is a standard if you have what you call actuaries, which are doing some level of estimate in terms of the retirement benefit, then what is the reliance which the auditor can place for the work done by these other experts. 799 are the heart of the auditing standards in terms of control reporting, and irrespective of what you do, this is something which has a direct interface with the external world. So please ensure that there is 100% compliance when it comes to audit conclusion and reporting. Because if you do not comply, it can be identified externally. If there is other aspects of the auditing standard, they will be verified only when there is a detailed inquiry. But the audit conclusion and reporting is something which is available to the public in large or the stakeholders, and hence be careful that you comply with this auditing standards, these 5 auditing standards in totality. Then there are specialized areas for which there are 3 auditing standards. There are review engagements, so which are only for listed companies where you do your quarterly review, and where you are the statutory auditor and you do quarterly review, or you're just doing the. There are other assurance engagements and related services, which could be your agreed upon services or compilation services. So if you see, there are 45 standards, but not all of them will be applicable in all cases. So first of all, identify that the work which you are doing, if it's a pure attestation function, then look at the attestation related standards. But if it is slightly different, let's say if you are doing only consolidation, or let's say if you are doing an agreed upon procedure, means that you have done steps which you have been requested to do, and based on those steps which you have requested to do, this is what you have observed. Yeah. So it's and these are done when there are specific requirements, either in tender documents, or there are specific requirements under different laws in terms of what they want, some assurance from the chartered accountant that the calculations are correct, or the figures which have been presented to them are traced and matched with the financial books of accounts. So first of all, identify that what you are. So today focus mainly on attestation function. Within attestation function, there are three main things. One is the certification, second is the tax audit, and third is the statutory audit report. Yeah, we will look at the various of these items and what is to be done as an auditor to ensure that you are complying with all the requirements. As I mentioned, it's not necessary that all standards are applicable. So for example, if you have 402, which is service organization, it may generally not apply. This is basically the parts of the books of accounts are outsourced to another entity. If the company does not have inventory, then your 501 may not apply. If the company or the entity is just a single standalone entity and is not a part of a group or does not have any subsidiary, then your SA 600 will not apply. If the company does not have any internal audit, then SA 610 will not apply. So, you really have to see that what are the standards which are really applicable and accordingly apply them. I spoke about this risk assessment, that there may be an absence of risk framework itself. So what do? What you need to do is then increase your substantive checking, ensure that your transaction audit covers all key items or unusual items, and based on that, you say that there is no significant risk. So you have not checked the risk assessment in that sense, but your audit sampling has been amended to cover major transactions to ensure that there is no risk which is left out, or you are relying on since you're checking them in totality, the question of relying on controls and risk assessment per se reduced. Slightly digress from the auditing standards. Recently, they have also announced revised criteria for non-corporate entities from financial year 2021. This was announced just a month back. And so earlier there were 3 levels under the ICAI, and now they have created 4 levels within the accounting standard applicability, and these are only for non-corporate entities. So if you see, you're also more or less in that sense. If you had seen that small, medium, and micro enterprises, definition is more or less similar to that. One thing which you remember is that when you are doing auditing standard or complying with the auditing standard, the second most important thing, or a little more important thing, is complying with the accounting standard. Yeah? Because application of the accounting standards and auditing standard go hand in hand. You cannot say I'm complying with all auditing standards, but I don't apply with accounting standard, that means my audit is proper. No, that cannot happen. And you can't say that if I complied with accounting standard, but I have not complied with auditing standard, everything is okay. Both are required. So compliance with your accounting standard and compliance with your auditing standard. The level 2, level 3, and level 4 are where there are certain accounting standards are not applicable. So it could be cash flow, or it could be segment, or it could be diluted EPS, or it could be something on the employee benefits in terms of valuation, large table which needs to be disclosed. So you need to be aware, first of all, what is applicable to the. So sometimes what happens is we skip this step. We directly jump into the audit. So we do not see whether it is changed from one categorization to another. And that's where generally we miss out on the compliance level. And that also happens because within the team there is no rotation. See, rotation has its own benefit. So if you have multiple chartered accountants, every 3-5 years you should rotate those chartered accountants from one audit to another, in spite of the fact that it will be additional time and efforts, because that rotation will help identify if there has been a complacency which has set in, or if there were refinements which were required, but because somebody is so close to it, he is not able to see or visualize that. So there is also SMC, which is defined under the company's accounting standard rules, and there is an exemption from AS3 and AS 17, which is cash flow and your segment, if it's a small company, SMC. And there are partial exemptions in employee benefit, deferred tax, intangibles, and contingency provision. So these are the categories where SMC will apply. It's unlisted or not in the process of listing, not a bank. Revenue from operations does not exceed 50 crores in previous year, and borrowing does not exceed 10 crores. And it's neither a holding company or a subsidiary of a non-SME. This last one is very important. Sometimes we tend to ignore that part. So this was a slide from the auditing standard to the accounting standard, because I feel, like I said about the audit report, accounting standards are also something which are very, very visible on the financial statements. And there is a non-compliance with accounting standard. The general impression which you get is that audit barabar se hua nahi hai. So because if the accounting standards have not been complied with, the direct message to the audience or the stakeholders is that the auditing standard will not be complied. What are some of the practical challenges which we face when we do try to comply with this auditing standard? So now these are actual cases or pitfalls which people fall into. So we have to try to avoid those. So the first thing is the engagement, acceptance, and renewal. Let me tell you, SQC is very clear. If you are every year, you have to do a KYC of your client and then decide, do you want to accept this engagement or not? Now, how many of us really, we know the client, so we feel that we don't require to do a re-KYC, but that's what the SQC really requires you. And there may not be even an engagement letter which may be in place, because we feel that this is something as that taken, it's under law. Even if it is under law, there still needs to be an engagement letter. It may be a simple engagement letter which says that it is under the law. And let me tell you, these specimens are available in various auditing standards, as well as the institute other booklets which have come out for audit of smaller entities. The other area which we typically do not focus on is that we are doing multiple conflicting services to the same client, whether it is business advisory, whether it is taxation, whether it is audit. Now, rules over the years have been towards alienating audit services from other services. Okay. Now, this may sound slightly difficult that you have nurtured a client, and if you're doing audit, why should you not be able to do advisory services? But that's the trend throughout, that there would be a conflict of interest, and doing advisory, you should not be doing the audit services. Self-review threat is that you are doing the work and you are yourself reviewing that work. What happens? Or the partner rotation is something which may not have happened, or team rotation may not have happened, and it's the same people who are doing that. So, familiarization goes to the extent that it itself becomes a risk, that you are too familiar with the client or its operations, and hence you do not challenge some of these standard practices. So what do you need? Again, categorize within your own clients ABC. What you think are critical clients, which are A and B. Try to at least set up some additional systems or processes for those AB clients. You may not do it for the C category clients. Ensure that the documentation is not compromised. This is one area which larger firms, they give 80% weightage to documentation. That's what I have understood. Planning and documentation is the key area where it comes to that. Whereas medium size, it's completely opposite. We give maybe 15-20% importance to documentation and planning. So that needs to change. It needs to be balanced both ways. If it's 20, it needs to become 50-50 or 60-40, so that we give due importance to documentation as well as the actual doing of the audit. Sometimes I've seen that the NOC is not obtained from the outgoing auditor, and that becomes an issue later on. The format of the engagement letter does not capture. So example, I'll tell you that it says you cannot share documents, confidentiality clauses, but then there are exceptions to that. If a regulator requires it for you to share it, or if it is a peer review, or if it is a QRB, or whether it is by any other statute that you're required to share, then that confidentiality clause is overridden by the requirement under the law. This needs to be correctly captured. You know, there is another thing which, in terms of independence, nationally, which is practiced, is that the audit staff will not work for the client for a period of either 1 year or 2 years post leaving the audit firm where the audit staff was working. So you have a cool-off period in terms of the people whom you are engaging. So these are some of the things which you have to be careful. As I told you, these specimens are available. If required, I'll share them again with you. Please give due weightage to the engagement letter, because that's the contract of what you are going to do. Form a standard template control sheet. Scan the copies. Periodically ask your team to give you an MIS. There are limits which are applicable, especially when you're doing tax audit. You also have to ensure that you are within that limit. I think 60 is the limit, or 45 is the limit of number of tax audits which can be done. So ensure that you do not exceed those limits, because this is one thing which is very, very important. Has also started UDIN, and based on UDIN, which is specific to each member, when you file your tax audit reports, and if it is sorted based on the membership number, on the basis of the UDINs which have got generated now, income tax department will be able to identify if you have crossed the limit. Yeah, to ensure that the transparency which we are moving towards, ensure that you have correct documentation, ensure that you do not cross the limit of number of tax audits. Rotation is another area. I'll tell you. So I had a client, and there was a non-fund based funding. Now we try to scratch our heads in terms of that if it is a non-fund based financing or facility which the client has got, will the rotation apply or not apply? Sometimes you may have to take a view on these rotations and take up a position that do you need to rotate or not. Audit documentation has always been a weak area as far as the auditors are concerned. Especially during this pandemic, obviously, it becomes that much more difficult. If there are documents that are received on emails, or they are lying as a replies are lying on the emails, you will have to ensure that they are correctly titled and saved in your folder so that you can easily retrieve them. As an auditor, you have to maintain your records for. And the more you digitize this, the more you use systems and processes, you will have less requirement for a go down to store your audit documentation. And it will become easier for you to prove that you have done the audit in the required time frame. I'll again come back to this audit documentation. So what we do is we have an area-wise audit flags. So what does it mean? So all balance sheet areas and all profit and loss areas, we created file dividers so that the different working people go into those folders. And same way, we have replicated soft copy folders. So we'll have a folder called fixed assets. We'll have a section called fixed assets. So your addition to depreciation work will be part of that. Within that flap or divider, then there is an index in terms of what are the keywords. For example, it could be lead schedule. It could be the checklist, addition, and there is depreciation calculation and things like that. So basically, it also helps in terms of your team members to say that these are the things which you need to check and put it in the audit file. So it helps in dual way. It helps in organizing your file, but it also helps in delegating your work and ensuring that the steps which are required by doing the audit. So for example, if it is debtors section will have balance confirmation, reconciliation of books with the balance confirmation, aging analysis, subset in those dividers. And when you look at the aging, there would be a section after that which is on provision for doubtful debts. So what happens is it helps in a what you call organized way of thinking and doing your audit in a there has to be cross-referencing. There is said that within 60 days the file should be available for anybody to review. Actually, it should be done simultaneously. So when it comes to most of the large organizations, the partner does not sign unless all the documents are in place, all checklists are filled up. It has been signed off by the manager or the team member. To understand the outside world, we also organize our own practice. Planning is another important area besides documentation. What are the developments during the year? What were the points which the client said I will implement it this year? So for example, fixed asset register was not updated, and here I will update. You have the history of that, so that what happens is when you go next year, you are not relying on your own memory. You have points which are jotted down, and you tell the client, okay, have you done this or not? The selection of the employees who are on that assignment would depend on the size and the complexity of the assignment. And the another which I see that the first and the second year, before you get familiarized, the senior of the team and the partner needs to be this is very important so that you get it yourself. That in the later years you can really reap the benefit of that 2 years of knowledge which you have learned, while your team can do the work and you can do a sign off. Materiality is another standard. There is a financial statement level, there is a transaction level. There are higher volumes. And what you need to do is start with materiality. I have seen many times audit are started because the financials, draft financials are also not provided. So you don't calculate, you don't do your analytical procedure in terms of looking at the last year's GP ratio, current year GP ratio. You don't look at the variance between last year's sales, current year. How much is increase in quantity, how much is the increase in sales. Nankishorji, if you can mute your audio, please. Nankishorji.
Yes, sir. Yes. But for audio.
Sorry, if you can mute your audio because. Variance analysis, which expenses have moved up, or what is the change in terms of volume, and you directly start the auditing. And that is where by the end you realize that either you did too much audit or you did too less in audit, and you may have to go back to doing certain other steps. So how is material to be calculated? It could be, this is just an example, but this is what most of the people follow. 2% of the revenue, 5% of the profit before tax, or 1% of the asset base. So calculate that. Then you know that transactions, which are above this, definitely you need to check them in totality. You need to go into the depth of them and ensure that there is no material misstatement to do those transactions. Yeah. Ensure that you follow materiality, ensure you follow planning, ensure you follow documentation. We'll come to the sampling standard also, because these are the pillars of your audit. So I already spoke about this 315, that there is a lack of segregation of duties or maker-checker control is not there. There is an overriding power with the promoters. The owner बोलता है मेरा ही company है तो क्या problem है? अरे क्या problem है? But you cannot then put your personal expenditure as a part of your business expenditure, right? It's not only about income tax, but certifying the business statement, the statement of financial statements of a business. And if there is a personal expenditure, can you say the accounts are true and fair? Forget income tax. No, you cannot say that. The promoter will say, okay, but I had gone to a foreign to look at alternative vendor. Okay, fine. But then why is your family along with you? You can go for a vendor search or for a customers, but it cannot apply to your family. So again, identify that as I told you, in a larger organization, risks are of different type. But when it comes to smaller organization, this is one of the risks. And they will always pressurize you. अरे मेरा तो 30% का नुकसान हो रहा है. अरे नुकसान क्या हो रहा है? If you are expending something, okay, which is not for the purpose of business, that is not allowable for your tax break. That is out of an appropriation of your income. Formulate audit procedures to address this risk. So, as I told, do more transaction audit, review all unusual and large transactions, apply analytical procedures, have a dialogue with the management and promoters in terms of how they are managing and controlling their business affairs. That if there are loopholes and lacunas, how do they control and monitor? Yeah. So understand from them their methodology of controlling the business. Compliance with all the allied laws. This is important, whether it is RBI, labor law. So I had to give up one audit because there was non-compliance with PF and ESIC, and so there was cash payment to the workers at the factory, and the promoter was not able to regularize it. I told him that you give it to a labor contractor, so that then the labor contractor can at least give a declaration in terms of saying that he has complied with this PF and ESIC guidelines. It did not happen, and there was no choice but for me to resign. And let me tell you, it's important. Unless you are able to demonstrate that no, there are certain things which you would not compromise, you will not be able to improve your own stature within the community. And I say community in terms of the circle, in terms of your clients, in terms of your people, they will also not start their work in a proper religious manner. Checklist for compliance with law is very important. Laws keep on changing. Update those checklists. If there are new due dates, if there are new requirements for filing, ensure that they are captured so that you can compare it. And this is one area I'll tell you very importantly. Sometimes the owner may not comply, not knowing what the law is or what is the implication of that non-compliance. And that is where it becomes our responsibility to explain them. Okay, bhai, if you do not do this, what are the repercussions? The repercussions could be as high as going to jail. So there could be a criminal offense, or there could be other implications of this. So if you are able to educate, bring awareness in terms of what are the implications for those non-compliances, or that because you are not accounting correctly, you are having a delay in accounting, that is leading to delay in TDS, that is leading to interest on delay in payment of TDS. If you can bring out that to the owner correctly, I think they will understand. Because any businessman would at the end, generally a businessman who is a long time player would want also peace of mind in terms of all the compliance. Yeah, you can plan your taxes, but if intention is not to evade tax, then they will obviously hear out your suggestion, and in all probability, they will appreciate the efforts which you took for ensuring that there is compliance. As I told you, sampling is another important area. Understand that in sampling, what is sampling? Sampling means whatever you have checked is representative. So, aapka biases, you have not been prejudiced or you have not been influenced while selecting your sample, and that sample is representative of the total population, and that sample, based on that outcome of that sample, you are able to give an opinion or conclusion on the transactions at large. So it has to be impartial. There is something called as random tables which can be used. There is something called as sampling interval. What does sampling interval mean? Let's say if you have 500 vouchers and you need to check 10%. So out of 500 vouchers, you need to check 50. Okay, 500 divided by 50, the sampling interval becomes 10. Then you select any one number. So let's say randomly you selected number 3. So then it is 3, 13, 23, 33, and 43. These are the vouchers, because you said the sampling interval needs to be 10. Yeah, that is a scientific method. There are other tools available for sampling. Generally, we use judgment. Judgment is not wrong. If you use materiality along with judgment and then some random sampling, I think it should be sufficient for a smaller or medium enterprise. But try to be as scientific as you can while performing the sampling. Confirmation of balances, and this is one thing which Satyam taught all of us. In Satyam, the balances were received by the company, and from the company, those balance confirmations were given to the auditors. And the auditing standard very clearly requires that you should directly confirmation at your own office. So the chartered accountant is responsible to get the responses on balances, whether it is bank, whether it is investment, whether it is debtors. The first preference is that you should get the confirmation directly at your location, which means there is an additional cost because there will be a prepaid postage which has to be applied. There are now softwares which are available for confirmation. One of our CA fraternity guy has started that. I think Firmway or something is in the name. But the confirmation is a very, very important tool. And as I told you, post Satyam, so PwC, when they did the audit, they relied on the via the company confirmation. And this is where at least as we as auditors also changed that rather than seeking the confirmation from the company, we directly have asking confirmations to the bank, whether it is for loans or whether it is for current account or whether it is for FD or other investments. There is a concept of negative confirmation which is mentioned in the standard. So you can use that if we do not hear from you, we will assume that you confirm the balances. The another area is management estimate, where there is a lot of reliance on judgment. These are subjective areas. There could be lack of documentation. There could be tax consideration which creep into it. My suggestion is whatever estimates were used in year 1, keep a track of it in the year 2 and subsequently. And if you find that management has always under or overestimated, there is a accounting standard which says that if there is a diversion as compared to estimate, you need to disclose it. So if you made a provision for warranty which was either excessive or too short, you can always highlight that in your financial statements, and that will help you tell the management indirectly that please be accurate in your management estimate. If you are saying this is good of received, then in the next year you cannot then say it is bad debts. I mean, this is just one example, but this management estimate is another very critical area. Please monitor the actual estimate vis-a-vis, the initial estimate while doing the accounting, where vis-a-vis the actual when it crystallizes, and compare whether management has been fair in terms of its estimate or not fair. Related party is another area which needs to be checked. If there are more related party transactions, you will have to see whether there is a transfer of profit from one entity to another, or are these at arm's length. Going concern over the last few years has been very, very important. It's not a checkbox. There is a specific requirement for reporting if there is an uncertainty as regards going concern. So if there are losses in the company, this is the first indicator that the going concern is impaired. If there is negative net worth, that is your second indicator. The third indicator is that the current liabilities are greater than the current assets. So the funds may not be sufficient, or there is a diversion of short-term funds for long-term purposes. So if there are any of these 4 indicators, ensure that you review it. There is another thing that the promoter says that, okay, we will pump in money as and when required. Rather than they just stating it, ask them to provide a comfort letter in favor of the company or the auditors. Because it cannot happen at a later date. So unless there is a written document from the promoters in terms of that they will support the company in case the funds are insufficient, please keep it as a audit documentation so that tomorrow it does not happen your work versus promoters' work. One suggestion which I would give is that there is a guidance note on the certification. It is very, very exhaustive. It says that you have to be very clear in terms of you are addressing your certificate. There is a concept of limited assurance and reasonable assurance based on the level of checking. There is a specific format which has been prescribed. So even if the authority says that they do not want format, put it as by way of an annexure or as an explanatory note to the main certificate. What has been suggested by the guidance note. And is mandatory for each and every certificate. Engagement letter and letter of representation is also mandatory for each and every. Yeah, each and every certificate engagement is a separate thing where all auditing standards in their relevance have to be complied with. Other challenges which may be there is the ERP package may not be very robust, so there may be a lot of editing or backdating which may be there. Fixed asset register may not have been maintained. Lack of audit trail could be there, or the approvals by the promoters could not be in writing. Try to cover up all these somewhere or the other, either in your management letter or in your suggestions, or sometimes even in your notes. So for example, I was doing a partnership audit. Now partnership audit fixed asset register bana nahi tha. So मैंने notes में लिख दिया that the partnership firm is in the process of updating its fixed asset register. So what happens is then that is indirectly the partners themselves are saying that this is something which we are working on. Yeah. So try to make your financial statements in that sense little more transparent and informative. Other challenges are internal controls nahi hoga, internal audit nahi hoga. Testing and designs of IFC may not be there. So you have to then change your audit method or your audit process to ensure that with these challenges, your audit conclusion is not compromised. Understand as I told, in the first 1 or 2 years, spend a little more time, understand the mindset or the attitude and approach of the promoters so that you are able to ensure that the audit is smoothly done in the subsequent years. Pandemic has its own challenges in terms of if the records are not available in the virtual form or scanned version, then how do you do the audit? So there are a lot of guidance which Institute has provided on this. These are the 3 booklets which Institute has issued on auditing during the COVID times. So please go through specific questions. So if you've not been able to verify inventory, can you do a video call? If you've not been able to check certain documents, what is the quantum of those items and what is the alternative audit procedure which you adopted, or you could not adopt any alternative audit procedure. I'll quickly come to QRB related observation. QRB is Quality Review Board, which is by the government and institute, and the peer review board. They are saying that SQC1, there is a major non-compliance. As I told you, SQC1 is the mother of all standards. It's a Bible in terms of what quality standards should be implemented when it comes to the auditing firm, what they should do and what they should not do. It's like a standard operating procedure for what you call बाकी लोगों को तो SQ standard operating procedure बनवाना पड़ता है, अपने को तो institute ने बना के दिया है. We just have to implement it. The other large non-compliances are on audit documentation and external confirmations. These are some of the key points which are identified. No proper documentation for basis in the audit reports. Audit report में कुछ लिखा है, but there is no basis for it. IFC के लिए कोई documentation नहीं है. Mismatch in comments in CARO and as well. documents for carry forward points to be checked in subsequent audit. That was not there. Major observation without reference to source document, improper no linking of documents, no checklist in audit documentation for compliance with SA. So you also need one single page saying that you have complied with all the auditing standards. No, yes, no, not applicable, and what was the observation. No relevant working paper for audit procedures as required by SA, and lack of segregation and indexation of working paper. Next, I will go to practice units. Any chartered accountant who is doing attestation function, if it does not fall under practice unit 1 or 2, still falls under practice unit level 3, and it needs to make a statement to the peer review board saying that it falls under practice unit 3 and it needs to get itself peer reviewed once in 5 years. Yeah. So understand that this is something which is like a mandatory thing. If you do not comply, then you're not complying with the institute guidelines or code of conduct of the peer review. Has its own set of checking points, which is independence confirmation, final trial balance, control evaluation checklist, computation of materiality, sampling document, significant matters discussed with clients and how resolved, accounting standard checklist, summary and detailed, secretarial compliance certificate, listing of changes made to the permanent audit file, borrowing agreements and confirmations, actuarial valuation certificates for employee benefits, physical verification documents, loan and advance agreement, and partners manager review notes. Basically, what they are looking at is at least documents for these areas. These are bare minimum. The partner has to sign off that, okay, I did check all the every papers which my team has checked, and based on that, I have formed my opinion. I'll come to the suggested thing is that do a pre-audit, understand the mindset, use checklist and templates. These are given by the institute. I'll come to that literature. So there is a lot of ready material about audit checklist. You just have to use materiality level has to be defined correctly, and ensure that you do your analytical and desktop review so that there are no apparent mismatches when it comes to your financial statements. Checklist and templates, including for query sheet, ensure that the management letter and LOR are signed, have a control on the letter of representation. Ensure you review the changes in partnership deed, trust deed, and you have them in place. Focus on, and you actually check them because it's possible. So I give you that one example. If there is a dispute between 2 partners or 3 partners were there. But if you could ensure that all the partners have signed the financial statements, you have reduced the risk of that dispute, you getting affected by that dispute, because all the 3 partners have signed the financial statements. Then there is nothing which one partner can come back and tell, oh, I was not aware about it. But it's part of your financial statements. How can you say that if you have signed it, you were still not aware about it? Focus on going concern, utilization of funds and statutory obligations. Focus on high value and unusual transactions. So as I told you, this is the ICA publications on practitioner's guide for small entities. Please refer that. There is a checklist, there is guidance available on audit procedure, there are specimen for engagement letter, appointment letter, NOC, all these items. And there is an implementation guide on audit of IFC for smaller and less complex companies, because IFC is a complex, it has become a slightly complex subject. Murtuza will speak about that, but for smaller companies, they have come out with a separate guidelines. Yeah, that's it from my side. As I told you, the crux is that as an auditor, ensure what is the risk which you are with, how do you ring-fence yourself from any wrongdoing which is identified at a later stage, and for that, are you sufficiently doing your audit procedure test, and are you documenting? Have you evaluated the client culture, the other risks which are there? Is there a huge borrowing? Is there over leveraging? So identify those risks and accordingly meet your audit procedures to prove the requirement with that particular client. That's it from my side. If there are any questions, I will be glad to answer them. And sorry, Murtuza, I have taken 10 minutes of your time, but that was because we started 5-10 minutes late.
No problem.
Yes, sir.
Members, if anybody have any query, please put it in a chat box.
It's a little dry subject, so I don't know what queries will come by. But nonetheless, if there is any practical issues which people are facing, I'll try to address them, because I've come across, where shareholders are fighting tooth and nail, and you are the auditor, and then they want to change the auditor, and then the auditor says, no, I will not resign because there is a protection for removal of the auditor. So those things do happen in real life, and those experiences teach us to ensure that we improve or learn from those instances. Yeah, Murtuza, anything from your side?
I think you covered it quite well. So I think you covered the SQC, all the standards and various things.
Yeah.
So,
sir, I have a query.
Yes.
There is a statutory auditor of a private limited company.
Yeah.
Which is planning to undergo certain financial transactions.
Okay.
And the statutory auditor has applied for being the financial advisor of that company. Would that amount to be a conflict of interest?
Yes.
Yes.
The statutory auditor cannot be the financial advisor for that expansion or the fundraising.
It is basically separation. There is a family separation involved there.
Even the advice on family separation, and if that entity which you are the auditor is involved, there would be some compromise on the independence. What exactly is the role of the advisor? You will have to see. If it is not to do with the financials of the company, then you can say that this is a separate assignment where you are doing an mediation, or trying to do a family separation, and it has no bearing on the audit of the entity. Then you may say that the independence is not compromised, and especially if all the stakeholders have appointed both in the company as well as the family members. So again, you will have to look at the nature of assignment and whether that entity which you are auditing, how deeply is it involved in the family separation activity.
Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, I have one question regarding NOC.
Yeah, NOC. Yeah.
Sir, is my voice audible?
Yes, Vaibhav. Yes, Vaibhav.
Yes. Okay, sir. Sir, what to do when we have communicated with the previous auditor and he did not reply whether he has any objection? And yes.
So it's very clear. It should be a negative statement that if we do not hear from you within 7 days, 10 days, 12 days, 15 days, then we assume that you have no objection. Yes. Because it cannot be that non-response from the auditor. You cannot let the entity and the new auditor suffer due to that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. My next question was the very same. You said whether we can include a statement that if no reply is received within 7 days, 10 days, then it will be deemed that you have no objection.
Yes. Generally, you should include that.
Okay. And sir, what is the reasonable time limit? Whether the previous auditor should reply?
So ideally, you should give 10 to 12 days or 2 weeks time. But if you have been appointed at the fag end of a due date,
okay, sir.
That's where generally people try to shorten the time frame, and then people say, okay, if we do not hear from you within 5 days, 6 days. Ideally, I think in such cases, if you can pick up the phone and at least speak to the outgoing auditor, or if you can write an email. I think now people even give NOC on WhatsApp. So what I'm saying, try to understand, is there any critical reason, and if then the documentation can follow. And especially, you also have to see whether the auditor has resigned or he has not resigned and you are being appointed.
Okay. Yes, understood, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
Sir, I have one more question regarding SA 550, transaction with related parties.
Yeah.
Sir, whether if I am auditing a group and they have 4 to 5 audited firms within the group, whether they can give loans to sister concerns at arm's length transaction, that is interest rates prevailing in the market, whether they
You have
can.
to comply with section 185 and 186 of the Companies Act. If you comply, if these are companies, and if you comply with 185 and 186, and the company which is giving the loan should not become a NBFC just because it is giving a loan. So it should not be its core activity, and then the purpose for which the loan is given is important. So if all those criteria or conditions are broadly okay, then yes, loan can be given. But as I told you, you will have to first look at section 185 and 186 compliance. 185 are the limits, 186 is the interest rate, and as I told you, the purpose for which the loan is taken, and the entity which is giving a loan, it should not become a financial entity just by giving.
Sir, I have one more question. What to do in case of non-corporate entities?
For loans?
Yes, sir.
So if it's a non-corporate, there is this banning of Unregulated Deposit Act, which has come last year, and RBI also directly or indirectly prohibits anybody from lending money unless you have a money lending business, money lending license. So you need to be aware about these regulations. But otherwise, if it's a partnership form, proprietorship form, and it has given a loan for other purposes to somebody, and it is earning certain interest, and if it's just a surplus money which has been invested, I don't see that much of a challenge. So you will also have to see that, are they in the business of lending, or is it just to park surplus money to earn certain interest? And to whom has this loan been given? So it is unsecured loan, right? If this is unsecured loan, then what is the security that this money will come back? So as an auditor, your role is to understand the purpose for which loan is given, the tenure, what is the loan agreement, what is the rate of interest, and what is the security which has been taken so that the loan will come back, and whether the company has the financial statements of that entity to whom the loan has been given. For you to make a requirement whether a provision is required for bad and doubtful loans. So Vaibhav, I cannot really answer your question just like that. So there are audit steps which you need to do as an auditor, and there are regulations of RBI that you should generally not be giving loans unless you are an NBFC.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, can you share your presentation?
Yes, I will share the presentation. In Companies Act, there is section 73, which you need to be aware about. So a partnership may not be able to give a loan to a company because that's not allowed. Yeah. So it's only from directors or shareholders or their relatives from which the company can borrow. They cannot borrow from proprietor or partnership firm. So if it's a non-corporate entity, but the receiving is a company, then there is prohibition under Companies Act under section 73, the erstwhile section 58.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, sir. Murtaza, all yours.
Rakesh?
Yes, sir.
Yes, over to you.
Thank you very much, Milan sir. Good evening, members. Once again, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our second speaker for today's session, Murtuza Kachwala sir, RCM, WRC, and our very good guide. Sir is a regional council member of WRC for the term 2019-22 and was the secretary of WRC for the year 2021. Sir is the chairman of Internal Audit Committee of WRC, Committee of Members in Industry, Entrepreneurship and Public Service for this year. He served as a secretary for 2016-17, vice chairman for 17-18, and chairman for 18-19 of Kalyan Dombivli branch of WRC. He has been a deputy convener of Kalyan CPE Study Circle and has represented on various committees of WRC of ICI in past. He is a managing director with Provity and heads the risk consulting and internal audit practice for Western Indian Western India upon productivity. With this brief introduction, I request sir to deliver his lecture. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Rakesh. At the outset, I want to thank Rajendra Shete, Chairman, Nasik branch, for inviting me and Milan today. I also want to thank Milan for accepting this opportunity, coming here and sharing his valuable views with all the participants. Milan, thank you very much. I also thank all the committee members, Sohil, Rakesh, Sanjeevan, Piyush, and even the past chairmen, Harshal, and immediate past chairman Rohan. Uh, I think excellent work being done by the Nasik branch. And really, guys, keep up the good work. And as before I start, I would only want to say that, like, as we all know, the situation is getting very, very difficult. So I would request everyone to stay safe. But as we do that as well, as good human beings, wherever we can help support other members in the society community, I think by way of creating a lot of branches and study circles are creating a group of volunteers for plasma donation. And although as chartered accountants, we almost audit or we are consultant for all the doctors, hospitals. So we have a connection. So we can help people in getting bed, oxygen, whatever. I think we should try and do our best in this current situation. With that, let me come to the topic of today. And so I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So Milan covered a lot of standard on auditing, and as they will be useful for a small and medium enterprise, I would also touch upon the essays, a few of them, how they are applicable. And I will touch today from all three angles, like the tools and technology which you can adopt either as a statutory auditor or as an internal auditor to make our audit life easy and to add value to the clients. And I'll also, like, there are a lot of tools, techniques which can be understood, learned by us, and we can help our client in various of their operation as a consultant, and that way. So we can add a lot of value to the client in that manner by being a consultant to them, of course. But then we should not be auditors in those cases, to so that there is no conflict. So what we'll try to do, friends, is like in the next 45 minutes, from now till 6:05, I will try to cover my slides, and then maybe in the next 5 or 10 minutes, we will take questions. So allow me maybe 10 extra minutes to cover my presentation, and we'll try to end by 6:10, 6:15. The audit, as I understand, I have divided them into 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0, and I'm calling today whatever we are using as audit 4.0. I can see some people who like have been in practice for 25 years and would remember those green pens and red pens which we were using for putting text, and manual calculators for doing calculation. तभी casting होता था, we used to call totaling as casting, and then vouching, when you used to see from the voucher and put the tick, there was a vouching tick. And when you used to post from a sale register or purchase register to a ledger, then those checking ticks were called posting ticks. Okay, so that was 1.0. In 2.0, we got Excel, and calculation, we did not have to do the totaling by using calculators. And we also started using, some of us started using some CAT tools, and those CAT tools are IDEA and ACL. Now, with IDEA, ICAI has entered into an MOU at central level, and each and every firm with a firm registration number can buy the IDEA license, and one version of it which can be put on a computer or a server, and you can use for multiple clients. Okay, you can put the client data, you can write the queries, you can run the query. What queries to run, that I'll tell you. And this is available in the first year for 50,000 plus GST, and then you can keep on renewing year after year for only 10,000 rupees plus GST. So 10,000 rupees साल का इतना महंगा नहीं है. or we can use that software to do a lot of work. So that was Audit 2.0 according to me, and some of us are not even using that. When we come to Audit 3.0, we are talking about data analytics using various coding languages, and it can be like an SQL, which is a licensed product. SQL you need to buy, you need to pay money for it, and there is a open source like R, which can be used free of cost. Okay, and then we also have the next, that is Audit 4.0. And in Audit 4.0, we are talking about continuous control monitoring. We are talking about a lot of audit automation. We are talking about a lot of other things like optical character reader, RFID, etc., and various other things which we will talk through as we progress ahead. So that is where we are. In 4.0, there are lots and lots of tools which are available. I'll talk about the tools in the next slide. So as Milan mentioned, and as we all know, the first step in audit is a risk assessment, and then selection of sampling, and then doing a process walkthrough to see whether the process as designed by the organization is working fine or not, and control testing, and then we go to making a draft report or management report or whatever, and then on that basis we go and finalize the report, whether there is qualification, no qualification, whether it is material, whether it is not material, etc. Friends, here I would want to again touch upon one thing. Okay, like see, the standard on auditing are the basic standard. That is a framework, that is a platform, that is a foundation, and those are issued by the Auditing and Assurance Standard Board of ICAI. The essays are like, there is an essay on accepting engagement letter. There is an essay on issuing management letter and also getting a representation letter from management. Then there is an essay on documentation, on sampling, on working papers, on reporting, and there are so many of them, on relying on work of some third-party expert. There are also essays on information technology, and there is an essay on analytic procedure. So like what type of samples and what type of analytic procedures that are required to be used. Yes, so Ghanshyamji is saying whether any free tool available for sampling of data. We will talk about that as well as we progress ahead. There are like lot of these standard on auditing which we need to adopt and use. Similarly, when we do internal audit, there are standard on internal audit, and standard on internal audit SIS again are on reporting, sampling, and multiple other things. And then there are accounting standards. So there is a Auditing and Assurance Standard Board, there is a Internal Assurance Standard Board, and then there are a lot of other guidance which are applicable and which are available for IFC and for others. Okay, let me come through. But as we start our audit, the first step is, and where there is a lot of literature, is understanding the nature of business of the client, whether the client is in hospitality, whether the client is in hospital, whether it is in healthcare, whether it is a trading, whether it is a manufacturing, whether it is a pharma company, whether it is a telecom company. So understanding the client's business, understanding the organization structure, the departments. In a telecom, the revenue could be a prepaid, a postpaid, a voice. In a manufacturing company, the revenue could be sale invoices for finished goods. And the majority of it purchases would be raw material. And then there would be labor, and then there would be other costs. And then there will be manufacturing costs which are involved. So like understanding the whole organization, understanding the departments and the functions, and then understanding the processes. And in each of these processes, which process is high risk, which is medium risk, which is low risk, and where you want to focus more, where you want to focus less. So let me take one more example. Assuming your client's turnover is 100 crore and the balance sheet is showing 5 crore rupees as inventory, then maybe it is reasonable, even less than a month's inventory. Okay, so then there should not be a problem. But still, you will go and see whether there is a slow moving or a non moving. You will take a report, and if there is not much, then you will say, okay, fine, not to focus. But assuming in the same client 100 crores turnover and the inventory is 40 crore rupees, I'm sure that becomes material item in your asset side, and you're going to look at it with a more focus. And that is where the first step of planning, or even before planning, the risk assessment and identifying where the risk is lying. So if your client is setting up 2 large factories in Nasik, and the investment in those 2 factories is like say 50-60 crore rupees, then is capitalization a focus area this year? The answer is yes. Will you look at capitalization? Yes. And where will you start? Then you will start with the approval at the annual general meeting, the board meetings, the budget. When will they start? Who are the contractors? When will they issue the PO? Have the POs been issued? Is there any capital advance which have been given? X, Y, Z. And the moment you say inventory, the risks are different. In inventory, raw material risks are different, WIP are different, finished goods are different. And in fixed asset, again, the risks are different. Fixed asset risk could be physical verification, there could be capital advances, there could be multiple things which can go wrong. And procurement will have different risk and those. So like here, there are now these days, you have some tools which are available, which gives you industry-wise risk map. So for a manufacturing company, what are the processes and what could be the risk, what could go wrong, that is available, and you can look at these and you can identify. Again, there are quantification also. So when you identify a risk, what is the impact and what is the likelihood? And there could be a scale of 1 to 5, and 1 could be a low risk and 5 could be a high risk, and there could be materiality impact, and there could be reputation risk, there could be compliance risk, there could be so many other risks. And there are these scale which are prepared, and for likelihood, when it will go wrong, whether in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and in impact, what will be the impact on financial statement, etc. Looking at this scale, each of these risks are quantified, that whether they're high, medium, or low. And here on this tools, you can even put your client's turnover, you can put your client's balance sheet details, etc. And then you can say like, okay, this my purchase is so much, or inventory is so much, or so is so much, and it will give you a qualification. It will tell you, okay, like whether it is a high or a medium or a low. Similarly, there are a lot of social intelligence type of risks from experience. We know कि cash handling है, तो cash के अंदर careful होना मांगता है, fraud होने का chance ज़्यादा है. So that way, so those are type of things. If you don't have, like, if there are no 3 quotations, then there is a chance that you could purchase at a high price. If there are no comparative statements, then there could be a problem. If there is no approval of purchase requisition by the department head, then there is a chance that excess purchase is made by the user or the person who raises a purchase request. So what can go wrong if a certain control is not there? Those are type of things which are captured in this social intelligence tools which you can take. Now, coming to statistical sampling, OCR based scanning, 100% of population testing. So one question which was raised, I'll try to cover that question as well here. Friends, normally when you look at the standard on auditing, or when you look at while doing internal audit, the SIA, the sample size depends on the frequency of control. Agar monthly control hai, so minimum 2 sample, maximum 3 sample. If it is a daily recurring control, minimum 25, maximum 40. If it is a yearly control, 1. So just like account closing happens at the year end, then it will be 1. If it is a bank reconciliation which happens on a monthly basis, then minimum 2, maximum 3. Now, what if there are 50 bank accounts? Again, from that 50 bank accounts, you will have to select on a sample basis, maybe 10. So all 50, you will glance through the bank reco, कि bank reco बनाया है कि नहीं, time पे बनाया है कि नहीं, and bank reco में if there are checks which are stale, which are more than 3 months, etc., they are reversed or not, and proper accounting entries are done, and there are not huge items are not standing in the bank reconciliation. There are no checks which are prepared on the last day and they're just entered into the entry, कि vendor account debit to bank, and the vendor amount has come down, and then accordingly those checks are standing on the bank reco. Those are type of things which will check from all the bank reconciliation for 50 bank accounts. But whether the reconciliation is properly done or not, and XYZ, if you have to do a lot more in detail, then you'll do for maybe 5 bank account on sample basis, and you'll go and you'll pick up certain months and you'll do accordingly. So that is where you select sample. And now this was like one example where I said of a monthly control. But when you talk about a daily recurring control like purchase, so procurement में क्या होता है? Procurement में, like there could be 20,000 purchases which your client has done during the year, and this could be OPEX, CAPEX, raw material expenses, everything. Now, how many samples do you select? You are required to select minimum 25, maximum 40. Assuming you as a firm, as a CA firm, as a statutory auditor, you decide कि छोटा client है, 10 करोड़ से कम टर्नओवर है तो 50 सैंपल लेंगे, 10 करोड़ से 50 करोड़ का टर्नओवर है तो 100 सैंपल लेंगे, और अगर 50 करोड़ के ऊपर टर्नओवर है तो 200 सैंपल लेंगे. Whatever you can decide as a firm how many sample you want to select. Now, if you decided that you will select 100 sample of purchases, although there are 20,000 purchases in a year. Now this 100, how will you select? On judgmental method or on statistical sampling method? So when you say judgmental method, then high value recurring purchases, ऐसा कोई vendor जिसके पास ज़्यादा purchase हो रहा है, you will select those type of purchases and you will pick up. And someone says is relative of the partner or the promoter or the owner, then you will select those type of purchases. Okay, very good. But then there are other 50 which you have to select on statistical sampling method. Now, statistical sampling means 20,000 purchases divided by 50. The nth number is 400. If the first number, random number is 3, then the next is 403, 803, 1203, 1603. You will have to select. But what? Whether purchase requisition, whether purchase order, whether GRN, whether payment invoice, which one? So generally, I would say, and people may differ, but I would say take the purchase order. The last purchase order is 20,000. Then I'll say purchase order number divided by this, and then I'll take the purchase order number. If I select the purchase order number that way, then what I'll have to do is I'll have to prepare a checklist, and in that checklist for that particular purchase order, whether it is of 1 rupee or 1 crore rupee, I'll have to look at कि उसका purchase requisition था क्या, किसने issue किया था, कितना quantity था, और उसके बाद who released the purchase order, whether there was a maker checker control or not, then like how the vendor was decided, whether there were 3 quotations comparative statement or not. Then I'll go to receipt of material GRN and I'll see whether GRN quantity does not exceed the PO quantity, and then I'll see whether the invoice is received, then 3-way matching, okay, like rate, quantity, quality, etc. And then I'll go and approve the invoice and whether payment is made and payment has been cleared in the bank statement or not. So X, Y, Z, there could be 20, 30, 40, 50 columns which will check to ensure that the process is complied end to end. Now, how to do a statistical sampling, that becomes a problem at times. So there are tools now available for statistical sampling where you put your first PO number, purchase order number, last purchase order number. You say how many transactions, how many sample you want to select. You put your purchase requisition number, you put your whatever number, and the software will select the sample and it will tell you that PO number X, Y, Z will have to be picked up and it will have to be checked on statistical sampling. So there is no judgment कि ये relative है या ये owner है या इससे ज़्यादा purchase किया या इससे कम purchase किया, that way. So statistical sampling के लिए there are tools available, and when you want to do 100% testing, then what can you do? And there are multiple things which can be used. There are a lot of tools which can be used, okay, and those tools could be like adding together a whole process. And let me talk about procure to pay only. So like if your client is using SAP or Oracle, now at times your client may be using Tally only, but Tally may be purchase requisition का feature होता है. So user department will have to raise the purchase requisition. Someone in the user department will have to raise the purchase requisition, and there should be a limit. Okay, like a consultant level person or a team lead or associate can be raised up to 50,000, and a manager can raise up to 5 lakh rupees. And then every purchase requisition, the department head will have to approve. Something like that. Controls are there. So these controls are called segregation of duty controls. When someone does it and someone checks it, it is called a maker and checker control. These controls can be built in Tally also. Assuming your client is too small and they are not using purchase requisition, no problem. Purchase department to hoega, purchase order to release hota hoega. Purchase order can also be released from Tally. If they are not releasing the purchase order from Tally and they are releasing it manually through a manual book, then also it is okay. Then you'll have to see which is the first number, which is the last number, and then accordingly you'll have to take nth number and you'll have to select your sample of purchase order. Now, purchase order again, who raises the purchase order, who approves it, and on which party, and how was the party selected. So does the client have a purchase committee of 3 people, etc., etc., will have to be seen. And whether there was a large purchase and capex या कोई large painting या कोई large project है, तो whether there was a tender, whether there was a RFP, whether there was an RFQ, and how did they do it. So that will have to be seen. The whole process will have to be understood. Now, so like there could be some controls in SAP or Oracle or Tally. There could be some which will be like manual controls, and there will be some which will have to be automated and which will be done by way of queries. Now, queries can be done by way of Excel also, by way of ACL idea also, and by way of R, which is an open source. You can write free of cost. You can buy the R, but you will have to learn coding in R. Now, what are the type of queries? See, normally परचेज रिक्वेजिशन पहला होएगा क्या परचेज ऑर्डर पहला होएगा? तो परचेज रिक्वेजिशन आने के बाद ही परचेज ऑर्डर होना चाहिए. तो अगर 20,000 परचेजेस भी है, सब एक्सेल में लेके अगर आप मैपिंग करते हो कि परचेज रिक्वेजिशन का डेट फर्स्ट है और परचेज ऑर्डर बाद में है, तो यू विल गेट कि वेयर देयर इज अ केस वेयर परचेज ऑर्डर हो जाने के बाद रिक्वेजिशन रेज हुआ है तो रॉन्ग है, तो दैट यू कैन फाइंड आउट. पहला गुड्स रिसीव्ड नोट होता है कि पहला परचेज ऑर्डर होता है, तो यू कैन फाइंड आउट दोस टाइप ऑफ केसेस आल्सो कि जीआरएन बन गया और उसके बाद ऑर्डर इश्यू किया, ऐसे ही नाम के वास्ते प्रोसेस फॉलो करने के लिए. अगर पीओ में 1000 क्वांटिटी है लेकिन 4 जीआरएन बनाए, 4 अलग अलग डिपो में फैक्ट्री में है या 4 अलग अलग दिन में आया है, तो वो और टैली में वो कंट्रोल या आपके सॉफ्टवेयर में वो कंट्रोल नहीं है कि जीआरएन बनते समय पीओ नंबर डालना पड़ता है. कितनी बार ईआरपी में देयर इज दैट कंट्रोल, एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दैट कंट्रोल the GRN cannot exceed the PO quantity. But assuming that feature is not there in your client's software, then you will have to see the GRN quantity for those particular PO. If there are multiple GRN, compare. That can also be done. Now, using the analytics software or writing queries, you can also see if your warehouse of your client closes at 8 in the night. अगर रात को 10 बजे material issue हुआ है, so that can be picked up. You know, in tax audit, cash payments cannot be made on a holiday or a Sunday. So Sunday ka date you pick up and you see if there are payments made on that Sunday, that can be picked up. So there are so many different type of queries which can be written either by way of using an Excel, and you can take the whole 100% population, you can start comparing. You can take a like free software like an R, you can do a licensed software like an SQL, or you can even buy a ready-made idea or ACL where the queries are written and you can run those queries. So that is where we wanted to touch upon those type of softwares there. I'll also go ahead a little. So like when you talk about process mining, now there are process mining tools like Celonis, where if the documented process is there and on the whole database, if you run this solution or the tool will tell you कि कितने ऐसे cases है जिधर purchase requisition नहीं था लेकिन order बन गया, GRN बन गया लेकिन order नहीं था. So wherever there are processes not followed or 3 quotations were not there, or the purchase order which was approved by X and it was the renewed purchase order, or if it was amended by someone else and not the same person. Those are type of things which can be picked up by a process mining tool automatically and on a continuous basis. Now, there are voice analysis tools. Voice analysis tools can be used for call center. There are large call centers, you know, of telecom companies, bank, insurance companies, जिधर 100, 200, 500 लोग काम कर रहे हैं. Now 500 people keep on calling you on a daily basis for selling a loan or selling a policy or selling a XYZ. They get a lot of training that when they start the call, they should say, good morning, sir. How are you? I'm calling from so-and-so XYZ. Did he say good morning? Did he tell you that from where is he calling? Did he tell you what is the purpose of the call, or he did not? Now, if you get upset, then he starts shouting with you. Does he use bad word XYZ? There are so many things which are no and which are told them in a training that they cannot do. But if they are doing it, how do you record? How do you audit those calls? How do you identify the agents who are not doing the calls properly? So, if there are 500 agents, then there will be 500 auditors will be required. So no. So here what happens is there are voice analysis tool which can listen into all the recording, and on the basis of the recording, if the voice goes up, if there are certain words which are not to be spoken, if those words are spoken, if the person does not greet properly with a good morning and good evening, and in the end if it does not say thank you while ending the call, then those are words which will be picked up, and those calls will then be evaluated or listened by an auditor to see what went wrong in those calls. Virtual inspection is using drones, and using drones like physical verification or inventory can also be done, physical verification of asset can also be done. Drones are used in a lot of real estate construction companies में लोग शाफ्ट से बाहर उतरते हैं 10 माला 20 माले की बिल्डिंग पे, and their life is at risk. So whether they are wearing helmet or not, whether the shaft is properly tied or not, whether the trolley on which they come down is correct or not. So drone can go and take pictures, because if there is a large company like a Loda or XYZ, and if a worker falls down on one of the site and it comes in paper, it is a big reputation risk, and the share prices of the company can come down. So they use drones to do this. Similarly, like if there is a large company like Reliance and it is running into a lot of, like say 150, 200 acres. And in that acre, like when the people are going in the rainy season and there is a big grass and there could be a snake who can cut. So like the owners say that you wear gumboot, you wear helmet when you go inside. Do the workers wear those helmet, or so photos can be taken by a drone? While doing welding on the shop floor, whether they're wearing the glasses and whether they're using the welding glasses or not, that can be done by drone. And we know last year in COVID, the police, local police, Mumbai police also used drones to take pictures if people were playing games, etc. inside or they were roaming outside that way. Continuous control monitoring, I'll talk about. Now, there are a lot of organizations who are giving analytics as a service. Again, this is one consulting thing. तो मतलब कैसा है कि अगर आपने procure to pay की multiple queries लिख ली है या depreciation के ऊपर queries, interest calculation के ऊपर queries, if you can write the queries and the queries are ready with you, then there are so many other CA firms who also use the query. Then they can give the data of their client onto your server or whatever common place. You can run the query and you can give the exception report and you can charge them some money. So similarly, there are organizations who run analytics as a service. They write the query, they make the investment, they have the server, they have the queries ready, and any other organization can give the procure to pay, order to cash, whatever data, and these guys can run the query and they can give it. Let me move ahead a little. Dynamic dashboards. These are all reporting templates, workflow automation, and again, natural language processing based report writing. So like when you put up a certain thing, you can even write reports. Now, on each of these, there are so many different tools. Okay, there are a lot of them. You can use anything. When you are talking about process walkthrough, you got Celonis, you can got PathNow, you got Rockstar. If you're talking about like RPA, robotic process automation for automation and digitalization, you got UiPath, you got Blue Prism, you got automation anywhere. If you're talking about document, अगर contract या agreement है और contract agreement को read करना है PDF में, Word में, you can use Kira. So Kira is a document reading solution thing, and because see normally a client का अगर contracts है and you want to, there are thousands of contracts for thousands of vendors and you want to read through it, तो उसमें क्या देखने का, liability clause क्या है, अगर कुछ गड़बड़ हो गया तो कौन सा कोर्ट ऑफ लॉ में जाएंगे, क्या करेंगे? तो these are type of words which you can put into the search box, it will read, it will go to that paragraph and it will tell you what is required to be done. Now let me move ahead a little, and after this slide I'll stop, I'll take your input and then I'll go ahead. So ultimately, see, what is very, very important as we go ahead in the future is like data. And what is the master data? The employee master, the vendor master, the customer master, the bank master. These are very, very important. And like 10 years from now, maybe accounting will not be done by accountants. परचेस इनवॉइस आएगा, वो स्कैन होएगा, ऑप्टिकल कैरेक्टर रीडर या रोबोटिक प्रोसेस ऑटोमेशन के थ्रू अकाउंटिंग एंट्री हो जाएगी कि लाइक परचेस अकाउंट डेबिट टू वेंडर, ओके, और सिक्योरिटी चार्जेस अकाउंट डेबिट टू एस अकाउंट टू टीडीएस पेएबल ऑन सिक्योरिटी चार्जेस और ऑन कॉन्ट्रैक्ट और व्हाटएवर इट इज. नाउ on what basis? So there will be an item code or a service code. That item code or service code will decide whether it is a raw material, whether it is a security, whether it is a car hire, whether it is what. So that item code will become important, and that will be, item codes will have to be created and told your vendor that you put this item code when you give me supply. Then who is the vendor? What is the name of the vendor? So the vendor master, vendor code will be important. Vendor code will have to be mentioned on the purchase bid, and on that basis it will be decided. When the vendor code is read, it will go to the master and the master will say it is Murtuza. And who is Murtuza? He is the auditor. And if he's the auditor, then it is 194J professional fees 10%, and his TDS will be deducted 10%. If it goes to like say, okay, Rajendra. So who is Rajendra? Rajendra is a security service provider. Whether it is a private limited company or it is a proprietorship, it will be mentioned here in the master. And on that basis, whether 10% TDS under 194C or 2% or 1% will be mentioned accordingly, and then TDS will be detected. So when you do the purchase invoice processing, the sale invoice processing, the bank processing, or the payroll processing, these are all transaction data. And the master and the transactions will be linked on the basis of this item code, master code, vendor code, employee code, etc. And then accordingly, the processing will happen. It is getting a lot more complicated because the volume is increasing. The volume ke sath mein, the speed with 3G, 4G, 5G is increasing. Again, there are like multiple people who are accessing the same software. So someone connects to a mobile, someone connects to a laptop, someone connects to a server, someone connects from Kalyan, someone connects from Nashik, someone connects from Mumbai on the same ERP solution. and then the information again is shared with multiple people at multiple places. So the network is integrated. It can be a tab, it can be a laptop, it can be a computer, it can be a server, and there are three different languages. Your client may be using a Tally for accounting, but there could be a CRM, customer relationship management, there could be a billing system separately, there could be an inventory, some inventory warehousing package, and all of these multiple packages have to be interconnected at times, or they are used at the same time by the same users. So that is where it is important. See, like earlier when I used to go to a Kirana shop and buy, I knew like who was the owner of the Kirana shop, and he knew who was the customer. But when you buy to a Swiggy or Zomato, the Swiggy or Zomato, who is the owner? You don't even know, and they don't even know who is the customer who is buying a maybe a packet of khajur or a bottle of water from him or cold drink from him. Okay, so when you order, so that is a disconnect there. So the data is increasing, the computing power is increasing, the competition is increasing. Taj Mahal Hotel has got huge buildings, and each building is costing 100, 200 crore rupees. And when you look at OYO rooms, OYO does not own any building at all. OYO takes someone else's room on rent, whether it is a bungalow or a flat or a building or a whatever, and OYO gives it on rent. OYO does not have anything at all. So without investment, but OYO is giving it a price which is much, much, much lower than Taj. And OYO is in a way started competing with the Taj and Oberoi and X and Y. So the competition also is getting very, very difficult and very, very different. Okay. Here with this slide, see again, the changes in technology are rapid. And if we are resistant to change, then we will not be able to survive or compete in the marketplace. Let me stop for a minute before I go to this slide, and then I'll proceed ahead. So Rakesh ji, is it okay? The speed, etc., the voice?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
All good.
Okay, thank you. Friends, this one slide is like a little complicated, but let me try to explain like how various type of tools can be used in audit, statutory audit, internal audit, and in various consulting projects as well. तो सबसे पहला लेफ्ट हैंड साइड पे अगर आप देखते हो GRC सॉफ्टवेयर प्लेटफॉर्म. Now this can be a Tally, it can be a Zoho, it can be an ERP. आपके क्लाइंट के पास खाली SAP नहीं है या खाली टैली नहीं है. टैली के साथ में बिलिंग सिस्टम है, CRM सिस्टम है, इन्वेंट्री का अलग सिस्टम है. किधर मैनुअल रिकॉर्ड है तो मैनुअल को एक्सेल में टाइप करना पड़ेगा. देयर आर मल्टीपल रिकॉर्ड्स व्हिच आर अवेलेबल. Now from this multiple record, what data is required to be extracted? क्या डेटा निकालना है? That will depend on what you want to do with the data. Okay, so now if you are saying that there are like a particular product, I want to buy a dongle, and for this dongle how many vendors are there और vendor का rate क्या है, मेरे को rate compare करना है और find out करना है कि which vendor is the lowest rate. That means you have to go to that system where there is vendor master data and the price data and what product each vendor deals it. Get the data, compare it. Okay. Similarly, if you want to do like say in a fixed asset depreciation calculation, then you will have to go to that fixed asset register. You will have to go to the master where it will say like income tax rate alag hai, company's rate alag hai, plant and machinery ka alag hai, furniture ka alag hai. Somewhere the rate will have to be defined. You will have to pick up those rates. You will have to pick up all the additions during the year, and on that addition, then what is the depreciation which is calculated, what is the depreciation opening block, what is the depreciation addition, what is the depreciation deletion, and different type of things you can do. So what do you want? Accordingly, you will have to write your query. But then before writing the query, you will have to pick up the data from multiple systems. So extraction of data becomes the second box, which is a green box, which is a square or a rectangle. Then we come to the red, where there is data quality and data profiling. And then there are two things. One is a process mining tool, which can be done to see whether the process is properly complied. And the second one can be data analytics query, which can be done to see whether the everything is working fine or not. And I'll show you what are the various queries. I'll show you some examples as well. On the basis of this query, then there are dynamic dashboards, and you can also use robotic process automation for doing various things. Now, how can a robotic process automation be used in practical life? Let me give you 2 or 3 examples and then go to the next slide. बैंक रिकंसिलेशन में हम लोग क्या करते हैं? वी टेक अ बैंक बुक, वी टेक द बैंक स्टेटमेंट. बैंक स्टेटमेंट के अंदर जो क्रेडिट साइड पे होता है वो मेरी बैंक बुक में डेबिट साइड पे होता है. दोनों को वी कंपेयर एंड कंपेयर ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ व्हाट? ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ द चेक नंबर और द इंस्ट्रूमेंट नंबर, राइट? And in my office, article clerk sits and starts comparing one by one the amount, 20,000 debit, 20,000 credit. There's check number and they start matching. And then they say there is one entry of interest which is debited, which is not there in the bank book. Okay, so charges not debited. We write somewhere, and then we make a bank reconciliation. Check issued but not cleared. Check deposited but not cleared. Check issued but not presented, and XYZ, and make a bank reco. For 800 line item, an article clerk spends easily 1.5 to 2 days doing a bank reconciliation. Now, using robotic process automation, the bot will do the comparison between the two records, and the bot completes the bank reconciliation in less than 1 minute. 58 seconds, 800 line items, bank reconciliation is ready. Now, when I write coding using a bot can be two type of bot. One is a programming bot and one is a runner bot. प्रोग्रामिंग बॉट मतलब जिसके थ्रू कोडिंग करना पड़ता है, तो एक कोडर बॉट आप ले लो. उसके बाद आपने एक बार प्रोग्रामिंग कर दिया. प्रोग्रामिंग में अगर आपने ये लिखा है कि व्हेन आई से रन, द बॉट विल गो इनटू योर टैली, put your user ID, password, download your bank book for the month of March or whatever month. It will download the book, it will save, then it will exit, then it will go to your bank portal, put your user ID, password, download your bank statement, exit from there, save it, and then start doing the bank reconciliation. The bot will not only do the bank reconciliation, it will say debit here, credit does not there in one file, another file, third file, fourth file. It will also go and make a bank reco. अगर आपका last day of month है और उधर narration में आपने लिखा है sal for the month या only sal, it will go and say salary for the month of March. अगर 31st March date है तो 28 February it will say salary for the month of February. If you say OT, it will say overtime for the month. तो वो narration भी complete करेगा. तो जो आप लिखोगे कोडिंग में वो सब बॉट अपने आप कंप्लीट कर सकता है. एक मैंने एग्जांपल आपको दिया बैंक रिकंसिलिएशन का. सेकंड एग्जांपल आई कैन गिव यू. इन अ फार्मा कंपनी देयर आर लॉट ऑफ सेल्समैन हु गो टू मल्टीपल प्लेसेस. नासिक का फार्मा कंपनी है या नासिक का डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर है, तो उसका सेल्समैन शायद पूना भी जाता है, औरंगाबाद भी जाता है, बॉम्बे भी जाता है मेडिसिन बेचने के लिए. अभी अगर वो पूना जाएगा तो वो क्या लेवल का एग्जीक्यूटिव है और उसको कितना रुपए का नाइट स्टे अलाउड है, वो एक पॉलिसी होता है कि लाइक इफ इट इज अ सेल्समैन 2000 रुपीस, इन पूना 2000, बॉम्बे 3000, इफ इट goes to a smaller place like Sangli 1500 maybe. So now someone with the claims come, someone sits and checks कि उसका एलिजिबिलिटी कितना है, कितना पैसा दिया, वाउचर लगा है कि नहीं, लॉन्ड्री चार्जेस कितना है, खाने का कितना है दिन का. Now, once you have that formula and you code it into the coding, then the invoices and the supporting can be scanned, the vouchers can be scanned, and the bot can immediately do all the claim processing automatically one after another. So bot ऐसा है कि bot is not a human being. Once you set up something at 8 in the morning, it gets over at 11. Then the next job starts from 11 to 13, 13 to 15, 15 to 17. It can work for 24 hours. So that is a runner bot. So claim processing can be done, payroll processing can be done, bank reconciliation can be done, purchase invoice scanning can be done. Purchase invoice scanning can also be done by using optical character reader. So that I just wanted to touch upon bots. Now, friends, like if your client says कि मेरे को काफी सारा automation, digitalization करना है मेरी company में, you will not go and start everything together. First, the top management buying is required. Then there has to be a proper budget. There should be hardware and software. You should understand what they are doing, what is the mentality. Pick up one particular area or process and then do it. Once it is successful, you can show them value. Go to second, third, fourth, fifth, and they will keep on calling you again and again, again and again. Let me go ahead a little. I got a lot to show. So when you talk about the whole procure to pay, मैंने एक ही process end to end लिया last तक. Procure to pay, I can even talk about fixed asset, order to cash. You tell me and I can talk about that. But I am taking procure to pay so that it can make sense to everyone and we can connect. In procure to pay, there is a like first selection of suppliers and vendors. Then supplier के उसमें contract. Then you start with your raising of purchase order, getting the material, receiving the quality, checking the invoice. That is the transaction management. And then you go and see like whether that vendor supplied the right type of material or vendor evaluation, etc. That happens. So that is the whole end-to-end process. Now, let me go ahead and show you the whole process, how it gets broken up. ऐसा होता है कि like purchase के पहले भी क्या होता है कि like आपका sales forecasting क्या है, production plan क्या है, कौन सा item कितना purchase करना है, तो पूरा planning. Then contract management के अंदर agreement से लेके review से लेके X से लेके Y से लेके lot of things will come there. Now when you talk about the accounts payable, then you talk about the three-way matching. कि invoice आया तो कितना quantity है, उसको उतना ही quantity order किया था कि नहीं purchase order के हिसाब से, price क्या लगा है और rate purchase order के हिसाब से है क्या नहीं. क्वालिटी, किसी ने क्वालिटी चेक किया है कि नहीं, और क्वांटिटी रिसीव हुआ है कि नहीं, उसका जीआरएन बना है कि नहीं, तीन चीज मैच करेंगे तब जाके आप इनवॉइस प्रोसेस करोगे. So there are various activities, so you need to break up into various activities. Now once you break up into various activities, within that activities क्या क्या रिस्क है, क्या रॉन्ग हो सकता है, क्या कंट्रोल है. In procure to pay, what could be the risk? Purchase at high value, delay in purchases, okay, purchase of excess quantity, परचेज ऑफ सब स्टैंडर्ड मटेरियल, मतलब गंदा क्वालिटी का माल आ गया. गंदा क्वालिटी का माल आ गया तो उसके लिए क्या करना पड़ेगा, पहला वेंडर आइडेंटिफाई करना पड़ेगा, वेंडर की विजिट करनी पड़ेगी, देखना पड़ेगा क्वालिटी, और जब भी मटेरियल आता है तभी क्वालिटी चेक करना पड़ेगा. दिस आर फिजिकल कंट्रोल्स. नाउ एक्सेस परचेज कैन बी स्टॉप बाय डूइंग अ कंट्रोल इन टैली और एसएपी और ओरेकल के प्रोक्योरमेंट परचेज रिक्विजिशन कौन रेज कर रहा है. रेज करने के पहले देखा है कि इकोनॉमिक ऑर्डर क्वांटिटी है कि नहीं, रीऑर्डर लेवल है कि नहीं, एक्स वाई सी. So there are all of these. Now, by using various automated controls, what you can do is, like whether there is a bill-to-bill analysis or not, whether there are split PO, मतलब अगर किसी का लिमिट है 50,000 का PO रेस करने का, और अगर वो बंदे ने 49,000 या 45,000 का 2 PO रेस किया, how will you find out? आपको एक एक ट्रांजैक्शन जाके देखना पड़ेगा. यहाँ पे वैसा नहीं है. You write a query where there is a authority metrics का टेबल, या मुर्तुजा का अथॉरिटी मैट्रिक्स है 50,000, 50 के ऊपर गया तो मिलन के पास जाएगा, उसके ऊपर गया तो राकेश के पास जाएगा. नाउ whenever Murtuza raises any purchase order, all purchase order raised by Murtuza during the year on a particular vendor will be picked up. Those will be compared with my authority metrics table to see कि मेरा अथॉरिटी लिमिट 50,000 है, और अगर मेरा 20% वेरिएशन, मतलब 40 से 50 के बीच में जितना भी पीओ मैंने इशू किया है उसका लिस्ट मेरे सामने आएगा. लिस्ट आने के बाद मेरे को क्या मालूम पड़ता है कि 9 तारीख को 45,000 का मैंने इशू किया है, 11 तारीख को दूसरा 45,000 किया, और 13 तारीख को 30,000 किया. मतलब इट इज वेरी क्लियर कि 1,20,000 का ऑर्डर देना था, लेकिन 3 हिस्से में ब्रेकअप किया, नहीं तो उसके बॉस के पास जाता था. वो उठाओ और उसको वाउचिंग करना चालू करो, वही डॉक्यूमेंट मांगो, वाउचिंग करो. सो दैट इज हाउ द क्वेरीज हेल्प यू. Okay, now if a employee or employee is relative with a vendor or not, the employee का name, PAN number, data will be picked up, addresses will be taken. Similarly, vendors के नाम, address will be taken, and then a fuzzy logic will be done to see whether any matches come up, and those matches will be picked up. Similarly, for single invoice, multiple payments are done or not. तो क्या हो सकता है कि लाइक एक ही इनवॉइस का मल्टीपल पेमेंट. सिमिलरली अगर मल्टीपल वेंडर्स के पास सेम जीएसटी नंबर है तो वो चेक करना मैन्युअली कितना डिफिकल्ट है. लेकिन अगर आपने क्वेरी लिख दिया तो अगर एक ही जीएसटी नंबर का मल्टीपल वेंडर है, इट विल कम अप. with the same bank account, multiple vendors, it will come up. So there are so many different type of queries which can be written using the data analytics of the queries. Now, how do you identify duplicate payments, suspicious purchases, suspicious vendors? These are fraud indicators. There could be financial, there could be policy non-compliance, there could be trend analysis like PO analysis, open PO का analysis करना है, या परचेज समरी का देखना है कि लाइक सिमिलर टाइप ऑफ परचेज कितना हुआ था, लास्ट ईयर परचेज कितना था, ये साल कितना है, लास्ट मंथ में कितना था, ये मंथ में कितना है, एक ही वेंडर के पास कितना परचेज है. डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ क्वेरीज कैन बी रन, data can be obtained, ratio analysis or analytics which we call can be done, and then accordingly you can identify where you want to focus your audit. Now once you have all the data, अगर 4 फैक्ट्री है या 10 डेपो है तो उसका कंपैरिजन हो सकता है कि लाइक व्हाट इज हैपनिंग वेयर. Okay, so various dashboards can also come out. As we go ahead, I will be moving to continuous control monitoring. I wanted to talk about some of the auditing software, analytics, etc., which I have covered. I can talk about continuous control monitoring, give some examples, and proceed ahead also. It will take me next 10 minutes to cover those. But before that, Rakesh ji, Rajendra ji, is it okay? Can I proceed ahead? Does anyone have any query? I can take the queries also here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay. Friends, as we talk about analytics and continuous control monitoring, see, first is data. From where do you pick up the data? Only from your tally, from your Facebook, LinkedIn, public domain, internal within the company, external outside the company. Then you run analytics on the data. Once you run the analytics on the data, वो उसके बेसिस पे क्या इंसाइट आपको मिलता है, आपको क्या समझा, वो समझने के बाद क्या एक्शन आपको लेना चाहिए, और वो एक्शन अगर आप लेते हो तो वो एक्शन किसको टारगेट होना चाहिए और उसको कैसा जाना चाहिए, और उसके बाद it helps in increasing value or unlocking value for the organization. And here, let me give you one example. So there is a telecom company in Qatar. Now we all know कि SMS तो फ्री हो गया, वॉइस का रेट कम होता जा रहा है, तो टेलीकॉम कंपनी का रेवेन्यू कम हो रहा था. लेकिन टेलीकॉम कंपनी के पास डेटा है, and the data plan all the customers use, and using the data plan the customer do various action or activity. Now using that data or that point, how can you get revenue out of it? That was the question which the company, telecom company, asked. And the consultant like you and me went to them and said, okay, we'll analyze the data and we'll give you like various touch points and various actions can be done. On the basis of the action, it can be unlocking the revenue and you can get a share of the revenue. So I am in Qatar, I'm using my mobile, and while using my mobile, I go through the data to see like sports shoes, or I was looking for Nike shoes. I say Google करके Nike shoes देखा या sports shoes देखा, मैंने buy नहीं किया, and then I switched off and I came out. Now 2 days after that, when I went for shopping and I went into a mall, और mall में जाके parking में जैसा गाड़ी खड़ा किया, immediately I got a SMS on my mobile saying that के shop number 32 on first floor sells sports shoes. Now, if I went to that shop and if I bought the shoes, then on that basis, from that shopkeeper, some commission will come to the telecom company, and that is how they will get the revenue. So like that guy also earns by selling more. Now, what happened? The data was from my Google or whatever I did, action, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, जिधर भी जाके मैंने जो search किया वो, उसके बेसिस पे क्या मालूम पड़ा कि मेरे को जूता बाई करना है, दैट इज इनसाइट. उसके बेसिस पे डिसीजन लिया कि मेरे को मैसेज भेजना चाहिए, मेरे को मैसेज भेजा, एक्शन लिया. द मैसेज केम टू मी. व्हेन डिड द एक्शन कम टू मी? व्हेन आई वेंट इनटू द शॉपिंग मॉल वेयर देयर वाज अ शॉप. इफ आई गो इनटू सम अदर एरिया वेयर देयर इज अ शॉप, दे विल अगेन सेंड मी अ मैसेज. दे विल एनकरेज मी टू गो टू दैट शॉप and then buy. And if I buy, then it will increasing sale and hence this thing. So the efficiency and effectiveness, the breadth and the coverage continues in real time. It helps in bringing, and it also brings in lot of value add, and it also discovers what you don't know. So analytics does that. There was a point in time where something happened and then we said, how did it happen? What happened? Why did it happen? Now then came a stage where they say what will happen. और आज आप देखते हो टीवी के ऊपर भी आज तक and other show कि like if there are so many corona cases in Mumbai today, how many will happen tomorrow, or how many will be in Delhi? And when the migrant workers started going from Mumbai to UP, what will be the cases in UP after 1 week? And district by district they are predicting. So we are going towards predictive analytics, and we are going towards prescriptive analysis. Like if that happens, then what care that local administrator or that district should do? They should not allow people to come inside. They should quarantine them for 14 days or X or Y. And how many people from Mumbai will go to a particular zone or a district or a village in UP? तो वो डेटा किधर से आता है कि कितने लोग बॉम्बे में है, कितने लोग लोकमान्य तिलक टर्मिनल पे, कितने लोग ने ट्रेन का टिकट बाय किया एक जगह से दूसरी जगह पे जाने के लिए, और वो स्टेशन पे उतरने के बाद कौन सा विलेज नजदीक है, और वो कितने लोग लास्ट टाइम गए थे मार्च में, अप्रैल मई में, वो लोग अभी जाएंगे. तो उसके बेसिस पे ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ ऑल द रिकॉर्ड्स दिस टाइप ऑफ एनालिटिक्स आर बीइंग डन. एंड वी कैन आल्सो डू दिस टाइप ऑफ एनालिटिक्स फॉर अ क्लाइंट का कोई प्रोडक्ट है तो प्रोडक्ट कभी बिकता है. कोई क्लाइंट का ऐसा कोई राखी का धंधा कर रहा है, मैन्युफैक्चर कर रहा है, तो कभी बिकेगा, कभी उसको पैसा आने वाला है. सिमिलरली इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज, हर एक के पास इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी होता है. मेरा पॉलिसी का ड्यू डेट है 10 अप्रैल और 10 अक्टूबर. I get the mail or that whatever SMS on 1st of April. The moment I get the SMS, I pay on 1st April only. Someone pays on 10th of April. Someone pays on 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. So basis your last 5 years history on when did you get the message and when did you make the payment and what was your due date. They do a predictive collection analysis के 2 तारीख, 3 तारीख, 5 तारीख, 10 तारीख को कितना पैसा इंश्योरेंस प्रीमियम आपके बैंक अकाउंट में आएगा. ये भी कंसल्टेंट लोग करके उसका भी पैसा चार्ज करते हैं. ठीक है फ्रेंड्स. Again various tools. Someone was asking फ्री क्या है, कुछ फ्री है कुछ नहीं है. गूगल में डाले मालूम पड़ता है. If there is anything you can write a mail to me. Wherever I can help you, I'll help you. There is Pentana, there is ETL, there is like for audit analytics and audit का पूरा process के लिए there is teammate, there is multiple of them which can be used. There are statistical sampling model also which can be used. Now I will move faster. So like if someone wants to implement a continuous control monitoring का मतलब ये है कि अगर परचेस ऑर्डर प्लेस किया तो कौन से वेंडर पे उसका रेट लो है क्या नहीं, उतना परचेस का जरूरत था क्या नहीं, ठीक है, दैट वे। सेल अगर किसी कस्टमर के पास से आया तो कस्टमर का आउटस्टैंडिंग कितना है, उसका क्रेडिट लिमिट कितना है, उसको ऑर्डर डिलीवर करना चाहिए कि नहीं करना चाहिए, और नहीं तो फिर उसको मैसेज जाना चाहिए कि भाई तुम्हारा पहले का पैसा इतना बाकी है, 90 डेज के ऊपर ये पेमेंट दोगे तो ही तुम्हारा ऑर्डर जाएगा। तो द मोमेंट ऑर्डर कम्स द मैसेज गोes. So that type of continuous control monitoring, even if the customer's amount was overdue and still the sale was made, someone can verify and someone can immediately say like, here this has happened, why don't you take action and start doing the recovery. Now statutory auditor साल में एक बार आता है and they take some sample and do some work. Internal auditors sometimes do the process audit every year, sometimes do once in 3 years, sometimes do once in 5 years. Whenever the auditor comes and point out mistake, and then if the management starts doing correction, it will become too late. And hence, the management should implement all these queries in various of these processes wherever they feel on a regular basis, and they should keep on running the queries on a daily, monthly, weekly basis. And when they find exception, they should push it to the first line of defense. जो बंदा पहला काम करता है, उसको भी कोई policy procedure है, उसको वो follow करना है, and that is the first line of defense. Then there is this manager who does the approval. He is also the first line of defense. Then comes the risk management team, which is the second line of defense, and then comes the internal audit, who is the third line of defense. And the statutory auditor is after that. Statutory auditor का काम नहीं है कि identify करने का कि क्या went wrong. Okay. So it is the management who has to identify what went wrong, and hence continuous control monitoring becomes very important. If someone appoints you to do a continuous control monitoring, any organization appoints you for anything, writing policy procedure, creating a control self-assessment, doing a risk control metrics, preparing an internal financial control document, preparing a SOX document for them. सबसे पहला ये है कि you will have to understand the organization, the department, the structure, the function, whether they have policy procedures or not, whether they document or not, what is the hardware, what is the software, whether they have data analytics, whether they have the queries or not, etc., etc. And then only you can start saying that this is the whether the inside लेना है क्या बाहर से भी data लेना है, what to extract, where to extract, how to use, what queries to write, and what exception reports to do. So it can be a complete end-to-end process, and then you can hand over and go. One process implementing a continuous control monitoring can be giving you a fees of 5 lakh to 10 lakh rupees. Multiple process again and again can run into crores of rupees. There is a lot of automation, there is a lot of digitalization which companies are doing now, and you can help the companies in doing that. So you can move next step then to the manage analytics, then you can go to analytics driven audit, and then you can do integrated audit. I am on my last slide, Rakesh. I am just stopping then. So the first and the lowest layer is data. Where is the data? Whether you want to take from SAP, Oracle, Tally, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, kidhar se lena hai. Then how the data will be collected? Data collection engine. Then you go to where will you store the data? Cloud, server, data warehouse, whatever you name it. And then you write the queries, whether using R, SQL, whether you want to do analytics on sales, on purchase, on vendor, on fixed asset, on inventory, on what, that you write the queries there. Once the queries are done, then like you get all the reports. Now the reports can be either given in Excel or in Word or in PowerPoint or like this thing, Tableau or Spotfire or Lumira or whatever. And then whom to send and what is the risk. So whom does it go, and whether it goes on computer or laptop or mobile. So friends, before I show you a few other slides, WIRC is also organizing one course of 150 hours. We have designed the course, we'll announce it in maybe next week. 3 parts, part 1, part 2, part 3. Part 1 is talking about completely the coding in Python and SQL, 60 hours. Part 2 will be Power BI and Tableau presentation skills. And part 3 will be robotic process automation, optical character feeder, where you can do automation. You can do either one part or you can do all 3 parts. It will come at a very, very low price as compared to the market, much economical. So that way, and you will also get a certificate of participation from WIRC. Let me show you some of the queries. So like अगर purchase order में gap है, sequence gap, वो भी निकाल सकता है. Payment और invoice में difference है, वो भी निकाल सकता है. अगर समझो कि किधर आपका 23,220 रुपीस था और आपने 23,200 का पेमेंट किया, स्मॉल गैप है तो वो भी निकाल सकता है. पीओ में गैप है तो निकाल सकता है. हॉलीडे के दिन एक्टिविटी हुआ तो हो सकता है. नेगेटिव वैल्यू है तो हो सकता है. मल्टीपल पेमेंट तो सेम वेंडर ऑन द सेम डे है तो हो सकता है. There are multiple types of queries which can run. If there is a purchase requisition, purchase order, GRN, 3 quotations, comparative statement, all the data is captured. You can run various type of queries. You can create various type of dashboard, multiple factories, multiple warehouses, different type of companies in the group, different businesses. Then queries can be done. So there are a lot of these high value payments. Okay. Lot of vendor analytics. I'm just talking about procurement, lot of graphs, charts, etc., which can be done. So, friends, as the manner in which we do accounting, परचेस इनवॉइस, सेल इनवॉइस, ये वो एंट्री 10 साल बाद शायद वैसे अकाउंटिंग नहीं होएगा. The whole manner in which we do accounting will change. The manner in which we do audit will change. Maybe sampling we may not do, and we may not fill up those compliance checklists, and we may do only analytic procedures. The manner in which you do internal audit will do. But let me tell you that in the last 12 to 15 months, the manner in which companies are running their businesses without going to the factory, working from home, IT security risk are changing. They are trying to automate as much as possible using various software, and hence it is very, very important that we are ready. We start understanding the software tool, learning them, implementing them for our clients, telling them that we can do it, and the client will be more than happy to give you the assignment. So with that, are we ready to face the future with confidence? That is the message which I wanted to give. And so although it was a very short, but I need to rush a little, I rushed it. I'll stop sharing my screen so that I can see all of you. You can start your window also. You can ask me any questions that you want. Thank you. Rakesh ji, any questions? Happy to take.
Yes, sir. There is one query from Ghanshyam Joshi, sir.
Yes.
Whether any free tool available for sampling of data?
See, to my mind, if the data is low, I think we can use Excel, we can use macros, and using macros, we can do the analytics. Okay, at least purchase requisition date versus purchase order date, GRN quantity versus PO quantity, and GRN date versus order date. तो वो सब चीज तो हो ही सकता है, रेट कंपैरिजन हो सकता है, ठीक है. अगर समझो you want to use a standard tool like an idea or ACL, then you will have to buy. It is not freely available. But अगर आपको समझो ये करना है कि लाइक अगर कोडिंग आप सीख जाते हो R, तो R is totally free. You can download R, but you have to learn the coding in R, and then you can do any type of coding, any type of coding. So R is freely available as of now. That is what I know as far as my knowledge goes. Yeah. Let me also take one more minute to tell you, Rakesh and others, okay, during the last year, WRC has designed 10 Excel-based tools which are available on WRC website, and you can go to on WRC professional tools, and in professional tools you can get that. And so like जैसे अपने पास कोई client है, नासिक में कोई client है, वो समझो abroad में रहता है या software developer है, programmer है, वो जाता है, आता है, जाता है, आता है. Now he has to stay 180 days outside India so that to maintain his NRI status. Now when the client comes to you and says कि सर मेरा ये साल में स्टेटस क्या, अभी मेरे को जनवरी में आके बोलता है मेरे को और कितना दिन इंडिया के बाहर रहना पड़ेगा ताकि मेरा एनआरआई स्टेटस बना रहे, और पासपोर्ट लेके आता है. अभी पासपोर्ट लेके उसका एंट्री डेट देखना, एग्जिट डेट देखना, एक स्टैंप इधर मारा है, एक स्टैंप उधर मारा है, तो आप 15 बार वो जाके आया होगा तो आपका 2 घंटा या आपका 4 घंटा गया, और उसके लिए पैसा देने वाला नहीं. तो उससे बेटर एक एक्सेल टूल है, उसके हाथ में एक्सेल पकड़ाओ, उसको बोलो आपका एंट्री डेट एग्जिट डेट डालो, आप कितना दिन आउटसाइड इंडिया थे मालूम पड़ जाएगा, आपको और कितना दिन आउटसाइड इंडिया रहना है वो उधर मालूम पड़ जाएगा, आप उतना दिन आउटसाइड इंडिया रहो तो आपका एनआरआई स्टेटस मेंटेन रहेगा. बिकॉज देखो रिटर्न फाइलिंग का वही पैसा देने वाला है, ये काम करने का पैसा देने वाला नहीं, उसको एक्सेल पकड़ाओ, काम खत्म. सिमिलरली आई विल टॉक अबाउट ओनली वन मोर टूल एंड देन अगेन गो बैक टू द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन राकेश जी. तो लाइक जैसे लाइक अभी इतना फॉर अ प्राइवेट लिमिटेड कंपनी, whether CARO is applicable, whether IFC is applicable, whether company law compliance is applicable. So there are so many applicabilities. Now every applicability has got a different tax for it is applicable or not. So like turnover क्या है, loans कितना है, ये कितना है, borrowing कितना है, capital कितना है, multiple things are there. For 5 years, put all the data in that Excel utility, and this year का detail you put, you will know what is applicable, what is not applicable. So that way there are 10 Excel utilities available. अभी नवी मुंबई में एक मेंबर है, उसने जीएसटी रिलेटेड 2 एक्सेल यूटिलिटी बनाया. वी आर इवैल्यूएटिंग, विल अपलोड दैट आल्सो ऑन द WRC वेबसाइट नेक्स्ट वीक. एनीथिंग एल्स? देयर इज वन मोर समथिंग इन द चैट बॉक्स. Nothing. Ghanshyam ji says thank you. Anything else from anyone?
Yes, members, please, if anybody have any query, put
You
it
can
in chat box.
chat box, or you can even unmute yourself and ask. No problem. See, it is a slow journey. I know, like we are accountants, but see, like the institute during the course curriculum taught us the standards, etc. अपने को मालूम है कि बैंक रिको में करने के लिए क्या करना है, बैंक बुक और बैंक स्टेटमेंट. The coders do not know. But if we learn coding, then I think it will become a lethal combination. And there is lot of automation, lot of money which is being spent by lot of organization. And I will give you one more example till the time some other query comes. Rakesh ji, I'll take only 2 minutes.
Yes, sir.
एक टीवी चैनल है. नाउ टीवी चैनल पे एडवर्टाइजमेंट्स आता है, ठीक है. नाउ एडवर्टाइजमेंट्स कम थ्रू either Hindustan Lever can directly give advertisement to a Z News or whatever. Hindustan Times can also give to a Hindustan Thompson Associate or Ogilvy Mather through an agent, and through the agency it can come. Now, someone will send a PDF, someone will send a letter scan, someone will send a mail, someone will send a word note, someone will send something. So the multiple sources में से this comes. Now, अगर CID का प्रोग्राम चल रहा है तभी एडवर्टाइजमेंट करना है 1 मिनट, तो हो सकता है 50,000 रुपया 1 मिनट का. कौन बनेगा करोड़पति चल रहा है तभी 1 मिनट का शायद 1 लाख रुपया है. और अभी IPL मैच चल रहा है तभी शायद 1 मिनट का 75,000 है. और सास बहू सीरियल है तो शायद 5,000 है. So at the same time at 9 in the night, depending on what program is running, the rate is agreed. Now, when I want to show 100 minutes in 1 month, I will say Sunday को इतना, Saturday को इतना, Monday को इतना, दोपहर को 2 बजे इतना, बच्चे के प्रोग्राम में इतना, सास बहू में इतना और IPL में इतना, and I give that. Now that needs to be slotted into a slotting machine. टाइप करना पड़ता है तब जाके वो टाइम पे वो एडवर्टाइजमेंट रन होता है. अभी वो टाइपिंग में मिस्टेक हुआ तो ये जब भी इतने ऑर्डर्स आते हैं तो ये सब एडवर्टाइजमेंट टाइपिंग करने के लिए ये एडवर्टाइजमेंट ये चैनल को 28 people they required to do the slotting. They appointed a firm like us. We went and implemented RPA, robotic process automation. RPA now reads all the mails, all the PDF, all the Word document, all the Excel, all the scan images, and RPA does the slotting directly. The bot does the slotting. And after the slotting is done, if there is some overwriting, there is some crumble pages, something cannot be slotted. So manually they have to slot only those which goes into the suspense or in the cockpit, and they have to see whether all the slotting is correctly done or not. So now they need only 4 people. So the work which was done by 28 people day after day is now being done by 4 people after automation. So a lot of companies are doing lot of automation in marketing, in sales, in operation, in factories, in production, in not only finance. And who better than a chartered accountant who understand the process end to end, who if he know the tool के what can be used to automate what, they can say ये करो तो ये automate हो जाएगा, ये करो तो ये automate हो जाएगा, ये tool use करो. They will buy the tool, someone will do the coding, we have to just understand the process and we have to give an idea. And for this whole consulting, each and every consulting assignment including implementation can run into lakhs and crores of rupees. Anything else? Great, then I hope I could add any value and I could open minds to various new ideas. There are a lot of use cases which we can talk about continuously. Rakesh ji, Rajendra ji, Baroda branch अभी एक सीरीज चालू कर रहा है, टेक्नोलॉजी एज अ एनेबलर इन ऑपरेशंस फाइनेंस ऑडिट. तो they are getting 2 speakers on 29 अप्रैल को पहला प्रोग्राम है 6 से 8. फिर उसके बाद every Thursday होने वाला है, where 2 people will come and they will talk about कि डेटा एनालिटिक्स कैसे यूज किया, आरपीए कैसे यूज किया, मार्केटिंग में, सेल्स में, फाइनेंस में, ऑडिट में, और क्या क्या किया है. तो फ्रॉम देयर केस स्टडी, फ्रॉम देयर यूज केसेस, फ्रॉम देयर स्टोरी टेलिंग, वी विल नो कि हाउ इट इज इम्प्लीमेंटेड, सो दैट वी नो कि रियल लाइफ में इम्प्लीमेंटेशन कैसा हो सकता है.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, I think now there is no query from members. So let's take, I would like to take this opportunity. Thank you, Kachwala sir. Thank you for sharing a very valuable knowledge with us, guiding us on this next generation audit tools. You have added very good information to our knowledge and share very useful tools to be shared while auditing. This is a time requirement now, because the way we are doing auditing these days will be outdated in near future. So this will be the future of our audit, that we must use audit tools, and you have delivered such a beautiful lectures to how to use that audit tools and what to use. So thank you very much for sharing all the knowledge and giving a really wonderful session. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Also, thank you. I thank all the participants for actively participation in this webinar. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you once again. I also thank Milan sir for sharing his views on given topic. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.